All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. Well, I'm not a rock star like Hubert, so I think a small introduction might be, in order. I've been doing SEO for about 12 years now. You know what? I'm going to switch hands. That feels much better. So I've been doing SEO for about 12 years now. Used to work at Publicis before. Before being at Universem, we used to work at OMD. So Omnicom Media Group did that for about 2.5 years. And yeah, I mean, all in all, been doing SEO and SEA, for, a bit. Enough to be able to talk about it today. Now, the point of the presentation today, so the very long title is Why is SEO essential to your marketing and how to measure its value? The key takeaway here is that the point is not to make a very complicated, nerdy presentation. Because we've got a bit of this reputation in SEO to be very geeky and talk about technical stuff and servers and stuff like that. That's not really the point. The point is to help you guys as marketing managers to actually see the value of it and to see how you can actually include it into your media mix. Because here's the deal, I mean, maybe you've already had this experience, but when you plan your media mix, your media strategy for the year, you look at, the normal channels, you look at programmatic, you look at social, you look, all this kind of stuff, and you're just like, all right, I know where it goes. I know how much money I'm going to spend. I know what that's designed for, so that's fine. But when you look at SEO, sometimes it's a bit fuzzy. Just like, I know it's important, but I don't really know why. I don't really know how it works, and I don't really know how to control it. So the point here is really to show you, it's not something fuzzy. It's not magic. It's actually something you can control and something that makes sense when you actually add it to the rest of your media mix. Yeah? Now we've got about half an hour. I know you're not supposed to ask questions during. We've got like a Q&A section at the end. But feel free to raise your hand. If I don't have time during the presentation, we can get back to that later. Yeah? Make sense? Lovely. All right. The agenda, it's very simple. You take the topic, break it down into sections. We're going to have a look at how is SEO essential to your marketing strategy, how you can actually assess its value, and basically how you're going to be able to keep assessing its value when we move to like cookie-less era. Why is there a bunny rabbit on the picture? It's because I'm not big about cooking, but I do like visual arts. I like cinema, I like photography, the lenses over there. I thought I might take one with me at home. But yeah, so you're gonna have like cinema references the whole presentation. Yeah? All right, let's move on to why is SEO essential to your marketing strategy? Well, 2 reasons really. The first one, you can't deal without SEO. I think most of you already know that, but if you cannot communicate, you cannot not do any SEO. Second, it's basically a channel that performs really well. And third, it's actually very adaptable. And with all due respect, it's probably one of the digital channels that's the most adaptable. So depending on the resources, depending on your budget, depending on your priorities, SEO is pretty much always relevant to some extent. All right. So why is it vital to any advertisers? Well, first, quick question. In terms of your personal experience, who's never worked on an SEO project so far? Just raise your hand, no judgment. Yeah? Okay, so we've got one here. Anyone else? Nope. All right, same question for SEA. Yeah? Yeah. All right, so we've got second one, same one. Okay, lovely, perfect. All right, so apart from a minority, all of you guys, you basically already know the mechanics. Yeah? So the mechanics is very simple, is even if, it's not for you part of your media mix, you're going to be visible because people are going to look for your brand. Your brand might have like a niche authority. It might be very, more mass market, but people are going to look for you. So in any case, you're going to have to protect your brand. You're going to need to make sure you're there. Now the logical way of thinking is to be like, well, you know, I've got a website, you know, my name is in my domain name, so I don't really need to work on it. It's not completely true. Because what's going to happen sometimes is sometimes your web developer, I don't know if you guys already had this experience, but it's quite funny when it happens to someone else, not really when it happens to you. But sometimes the web developer, when you actually launch a new website, they actually forget to make it indexable. And people start typing, you know, they type your brand name and just like, oh, I want to find the website. Actually, they don't find your website. They're going to find someone else's website because the web developer blocked the indexing of your website. Or, I mean, you've got funny things that can happen like this. Sometimes it's not going to be the right page that shows up. Or, you know, like here for Canva, and we did a pretty good job with this one, but when you look at Canva, it's very neat. So you look at the results, you've got the name of your brand, you can actually see what the topic is. You've got a nice description that explains to you what's going to happen on the website. So basically, you know what's going to happen before you click on it. Now, sometimes it's not going to be the case. Sometimes it's going to be a bit weird. Google is not going to find the description relevant enough, so it's going to go in the content. It's going to go pick things in the content, and it's going to basically just put it together itself, but it's going to look very weird. Yeah. So the point being, if you want to protect your brand, if your brand is important to you, if you do advertising in general, it can be offline, it can be online, whatever. If you invest in media, you do need to make sure that in SEO it's going to look as good as the other channels. And it's common sense, really, isn't it? All right, best of class performer. It's not my best superhero movie, but you know, it's quite good. Superman, Man of Steel. Point is, what I want you guys to start doing, and I know it's difficult as marketing managers because it's not the way you perceive SEO, but start trying to see the money behind it. So start thinking, you know, I'm not just bringing visits, I bring clicks. So you can actually see, you know, the connection with SEO. I bring clicks, I've got an investment for the year. Well, what's my cost per click? If I take my yearly investment, I look at the amount of clicks I brought through my organic traffic. I go on Google Search Console. Is everyone familiar with Google Search Console here? Who doesn't know Search Console? Well, I know, but you know, it's an example. Google Search Console, yeah, talks to everyone, perfect. If you go there, you're going to be able to know what part of your traffic is branded, what is not branded. And from there, you're going to be able to actually match it and to have a look at your SEO campaigns and see, you know, how much of my branded traffic comes from SEO or SEA. And you're going to be able to compare the cost per click between the two. And from there, what you're going to systematically see, well, systematically, let's be nice, 95% of the time. 95% of the time, the best performer is going to be SEO. SEO because it's going to cost you less, because it's going to convert really well, and because when you turn that into a cost per acquisition, the cost per acquisition is usually going to be lower than the other channels. Make sense? And yeah, return on investment, well, that's the basics. That's why we're here. All right. Well, it depends on what you're looking for. It depends. I mean, we're going to have a look at it in section 2 of the presentation, but that's basically how you measure the return on investment of your SEO. Depends how you determine your conversions. I mean, conversions can be brand awareness. You know, it can be like the qualified visits, like good quality traffic. It can be soft leads, you know, like people that come on your website and they download like a PDF or something. It can be leads, so online forms, you know, for requests sent on your website, or it can be sales and so on. Can even be like visits, you know, visits to a store. Can be a lot of things like that. Depends on what you're gonna determine as your conversion. Yeah. that's on you, that's on your side, guys, to determine what the conversion is and what an acceptable cost per acquisition is. We're here to help you with that, but the basis is, what is the conversion for your business? Make sense? Cool. All right, agile and adaptable. Well, let's put it that way. If you run a programmatic campaign, you're gonna need volume, yeah? You're gonna need volume, A, because otherwise you're just not gonna be able to launch the campaign. B, because it's gonna need a lot of data to actually work. You're not gonna need that with SEO. SEO, you can start with a smaller investment, depending on the available budget, or you're going to be able to actually focus more on it depending on what's your strategy for the year. And that's the specificity of SEO. I mean, you can, ideally what you want to do is that when you do your yearly strategy, you do want to include SEO in there. But what you can also do is if you get during the year, or you get at the end of the year, and you're just like, well, maybe I want to push SEO a bit more, that's something you're going to be able to do, which is much harder to do with the other channels. Yeah, common sense, once again. All right, as a team player, that's a bit of a game changer, to be honest, because I don't know you guys, but something I've seen with a lot of my clients, sometimes SEO it's really seen as a channel like on its own island. Like you think about, you see the connection between social ads and programmatic and email marketing, this kind of stuff. You can see the connections because you're just like, all right, well, I'm gonna get this amount of impressions, I'm gonna get this amount of clicks, but usually SEO is gonna float around on the side. Yeah. What I do want you guys to start doing is think about how SEO can actually work within the digital ecosystem. The way it works is that it's going to really help you SEO performances, and that was your question earlier about the landing pages. So we're going to talk about that. It's going to allow you to better invest your budget, your SEO budget, if that's something you're interested in, which I assume you are. And also, it's going to allow you to grow your audiences, and your audiences, you're going to use them for your remarketing strategy. I just keep doing, this and this with a microphone. Is it bothering you guys? No, okay, fantastic. All right. All right. Improve SEA performances. Well, the basis when you do your SEO strategy, one of the first things we're going to do is that we're going to look at your website and we're going to make sure that actually the organization of the content, that it makes sense, that it's scrollable, and that from a topic point of view, so a semantic point of view, that we've got all the topics we need. Yeah, and if we see that we've got some very important topics, well, what we're going to do is that we're going to advise that you create sub-pages for these topics. Like, let's say that you've got one topic which is like, let's say high-end furniture. Yeah. What we're going to say is, well, look, if you want to rank for that, that's really high level of competition. So we're going to need more sub-pages, because these sub-pages, they're going to link to like your main page, and that's going to reinforce your ranking. Yeah. Now, what's interesting with SEA is that by doing that, you're going to give more options to your campaigns. Because you, SEA campaigns, normally, in an ideal world, unicorn, singing bears, all this stuff, normally it's going to mimic perfectly the structure of your website. So if we've done the work before for SEO, well, in that case, the structure of your website is already going to be ideal for your SEA campaigns. Make sense? Yeah? Now, what's really cool about that is you see these small pages here floating around here. What's really cool is that when you want to target specific keywords, you're going to want to have very specific pages, and that's basically what these ones are going to do. Make sense? Tough crowd today. Make sense? Yeah. All right. This one is actually really nice. I'm pretty sure some of you have already seen this picture. Yeah? Anyone has already seen it? Raise your hand. Nice. Hmm? Yep. All right. Here's the deal. When you've got an SEO campaign, the media part of the SEO campaign is how to pick your keywords, how to determine your targeting, your audiences, and stuff like that. But you've got another aspect, which is basically the landing page on the website. Because, you know, unlike other media channels, SEA is going to be influenced by what's happening on the website. So if you send your traffic on a page that doesn't have a good user experience, on a page that doesn't have content that actually talks about the same topic as the keywords that you were targeting, well, Google is going to give you a lower score, and consequently, you're going to pay more per cost per click. Is it something some of you guys were already aware that there was a relation between your cost per click for an SEO campaign and the quality of the landing page? Same thing, raise your hands if you knew it. Okay, well actually I'm not wasting your time. A lot of you guys actually didn't know it. So bottom line, work on your landing pages systematically, work on the content if you've got some SEO campaigns running. That's one of the first recommendations we do when we've got some SEO campaigns. You need to do this work because sometimes they're just not going to show. Because Google is going to be like, there's not enough content, or I don't understand the topic, or the user experience is not good enough. It's going to give you a very low rank and you're not going to show. And sometimes you're not going to show for one of your most important keywords. Yeah? Right. Oh, that's nerdy. DSAs. Same question. DSAs. Anyone knows what that means? Raise your hand. Ooh, nice one. What does that mean? That's. I should have said first, don't look at the screen because it's written all over the screen. Yeah, dynamic search ads. Yeah, that was a bit of a stupid one. Yeah, you can't imagine how much my daughter and my wife laugh at home. It's ridiculous. Anyway, dynamic search ads, the way it works. When you've got an SEO campaign, normally you target specific keywords. So you say to Google, well, look, my keyword, as I said before, it's going to be like premium furniture, it's going to be closet, it's going to be bed, it's going to be whatever. And so you're going to indicate specifically what you want to be shown for. But on top of that, what Google does these days is that it gives you the opportunity to actually just say, well, look, that's my website. You go, you crawl my website, analyze the content, and based on that, you're going to decide for which keywords you're actually going to show my ads. That's dynamic search ads. Now, Google, to use DSAs, it needs to understand the topic of the content. Yeah? If it doesn't know what the content talks about, it's not going to be able to show you ads. And the way it knows what the content talks about is that it's going to do like a normal person. It's going to read the text. Meaning that if we've optimized the page properly for SEO, using all of the SEO best practices like, headlines and using keywords in bold and working on the, the semantic topic of the page and so on, well, that's going to help us to rank in SEO, but also that's going to give so much data to Google to actually feed the DSAs for Google Ads. Yeah? Google DSAs, I mean, they're really cool because the cost per click is usually much lower, and it does bring a lot of volume. So it's one of these options that you really want to consider if your strategy is about awareness. Yeah? I'm losing someone over here. I saw you yawning. All right. I might try to speed up a bit in that case. All right. Better invest your SEO budget. Actually, that's a very nice one, this one. The best practice that we apply and that any single media agency in Belgium or across the world is going to apply, that we're always going to say, you need to protect your brand. So use SEA to protect your brand. Yeah? It's common sense because if you don't do it, well, in that case, I took this example, I think it's delays. because you could have a competitor that just decides, well, look, I want to be shown instead of delays or whoever. But the truth is, sometimes it can be enormous budget. I mean, what I've had in the past is I had clients, we were talking about several dozens of thousands of euros per month just to protect your brand. Actually, when you looked at the spend, most of the budget was spent to protect the brand. You know, which is crazy. I mean, we do search marketing. We're supposed to be an acquisition channel. We're not supposed to just protect the brand. Now that was the case, and what's a very strong trend at the moment is when you have a very strong brand and you can see that it's eating up a lot of your SEO budget, well, that's a moment where you might want to start considering, well, you know, to what extent do I want to protect my brand? Do I want to protect my brand like 100% of the time? Or do I not have any competitors? Because sometimes you're going to pay like 40 or 50 or 60 cents for a click. But actually, when you look at the results for a specific area, I mean, there's no one. So it's not like you're going to systematically pay for the clicks, but you're not systematically going to have a competitor that's going to show if you don't put your ad instead. My point being, key takeaway here, when you look at SEA, when you look at your budget, if you see that the defensive, the branded budget becomes more important than your generic budget, well, that's probably when you want to, you know, consider being more granular about this strategy. Yeah? Make sense? Lovely. All right. Let's continue with the technical part. Audience strategy, same thing. Very important these days, basically because what we try to do is that we try to be, you know, as targeted as possible when it comes to media. SEO, you're not really going to be able to... Hello? Okay, that's much better. SEO, you're not really going to be able to target specific audiences in the first place. You're going to target it with your keyword, but apart from that, you know, it's not really the way it works. Now, what it's going to be able to do is that it's going to be able to grow the traffic on your website, and afterwards, well, you're going to be able to get this traffic, well, these audiences, you're going to be able to get them through Google Analytics, and from there, you're going to be able to use them for your other channels. Well, Google Ads is the very obvious ones, but you can basically use audiences, remarketing audiences from your website for most of your digital media channels. It's a bit of a mouthful, this acronym. I do apologize for that. RLSA, do you guys... Okay, let's do it the other way. Who doesn't know what that means? Okay, I'm very impressed, or there are some liars in the audience. That's remarketing list. Yeah, so it's basically remarketing. That's just a way Google Ads is going to use remarketing audiences. So you basically you go on the website, you're going to see a specific part of the website, and Google, based on this part of the website, when you go back to Google search, it's going to recognize you and it's going to show you a specific ad. Which, in that case, you can actually rewrite a specific ad just for this audience. Yeah? All right. Let's talk about measurement. Well, that's written at the back, Minority Report. Not the best movie, but, you know, it's a good one. What we want to talk about when we talk about measurement, the point is not to be very overly technical. The point is, and that's a key takeaway here, is when you measure SEO, think about your business. It's not something fuzzy. It's not something floating around. It's something that you can measure. And based on that, you can see, you know, is the return on investment worth the investment? You know, how does it fit in my acquisition strategy? Does it work short term, long term? Where does it fit in the customer journey strategy? Now, the reputation we've got in SEO is that people usually look at it and they're like, I'm going to have results in like a year or 2 years or whatever. And I don't control what's happening. When, if I do Facebook ad campaign, I control the campaign. I know, what I'm going to get. Now, based on my small experience, the past 12 years, what I used to do 10 years ago, if I've done my job properly at the time, it still works. My point being, really, what you do now, if you respect the best practices nowadays, the work you do now is still going to be efficient in like 2 or 3 or 4 years' time. Yeah, that's where it's actually important to really follow the best practices. All right. 3 things important when it comes to measurement. What kind of tools we're going to use. How you're going to map the KPIs we measure the efficiency of your SEO, how you're going to map it with your business goals, and how we're going to make connections between these KPIs and your customer journey. Yeah, I do like to talk about customer journey when we talk about SEO, because actually when you look at SEO, you can really, depending on your strategy, if you're all about awareness or if you're more about conversions, you're really going to be able to adapt the strategy, the kind of keywords that you target based on that. Who in the audience is more interested in awareness, in brand awareness in terms of a strategy? And if you put a scale between brand awareness and conversion, who's more on the awareness part? Yeah, so it's mainly about conversions. Yeah, okay, cool. Conversions, when you take your customer journey, well, you're going to be much lower down the funnel. That's what we're going to see afterwards. And that's basically one of the things Hubert was talking about, where now the search terms, they tend to be more and more precise. And we've got all of these new algorithms like MOM and BET and so on, and they get super smart because they need to understand the intention behind the keyword. Well, that's basically further down the funnel. Yeah. All right. I'm not gonna spend too much time here because that's very straightforward. What we do when we try to see if the SEO efforts we're making, if they're efficient, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna look in Google search results, and after we're gonna look at what's going on your website. To see what's going on in Google search results, we're going to use 2 tools. We're going to use Google Search Console, and we're going to use ranking monitoring software, such as SEMrush. So Search Console, to make it very simple, it's basically just going to give you, it's server data from Google. Google is giving you data about how your website is reacting, how it's showing in its search results. So, how many impressions did you get? What was your average position, number of clicks, all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, it's going to give you like some health signals. Like if you've got, server issues, stuff like that, you're going to see it in Search Console. But what we're going to use it for in terms of measurement is really to know, well, are you visible and are you getting traffic? Yeah. SEMrush, it's a smarter aspect of Search Console. It's going to give you more data about the ranking. So it's going to tell you, well, you ranked, you were ranking at that position for this keyword, and you're going to be able to compare with your competitors and so on. But it basically gives you a more accurate idea of your ranking at a specific time. Yeah, and we can run it every day, so you can actually see the progression. Now, what's really cool with that is that you can actually see, if you use these 2 tools and you apply the strategy we were talking about earlier. We talked about creating content for specific topics and like making content for even more specific topics. If you work on that and you produce longer content, like at least 1,000 words, like Hubert mentioned, you can actually, it's really funny because actually you can see it in your stats. You're gonna see it at the beginning, like it's nowhere, and then it appears, and then you can really see it shooting up. So it's actually really cool. Yeah? So that's what you see on Google. Now, what you're gonna see on your website, that's all of the analytics solution. You've got server-based analytics solution, but nowadays we tend to use more browser-based, but with the end of cookies that might change. But at the moment it's mainly browser-based, so it's going to be solutions like Google Analytics, Matomo, Omniture if you've got a lot of money, but it's basically that's going to be, most of the time that's going to be Google Analytics. And Google Analytics 360 if you've got like bucket loads of money. Now, on the websites, most of the time that's going to be behavioral type of KPIs. So it's going to be, basically, how did people react on your website? Am I losing anyone so far? Normally, it makes a lot of sense. Makes sense, people? Yeah? Cool. Fantastic. All right. That's more, it's the kind of things we can do in a workshop. I know it looks obvious, but actually it's very important. It's to define which KPIs we're going to use. So when you look at your report, you're just like, all right, I can see the business value behind my SEO. My point being, for instance, what are your goals? Main goal. Just give me your main goals for your... What type of conversions? All right. All right. So the end result, what you want is customers.
Yes, it's offline. We are not online sellers, so it's
in store. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So where we're gonna have to, what we're gonna have to determine is to what extent we can actually get to. So actually, with the conversion we get on the website, it reflects what you're gonna get afterwards. So if what you're looking for is real customers, but the only action we've got on the website that looks like a customer is an online form, well, that's the part where we're going to need your help. We're going to need you to tell us, well, for one online form, how many, for one customer, how many online forms do I need? And from there, we're going to be able to calculate the cost per acquisition. Yeah, and from there, we get the lifetime value, and from there, we can tell you at the end of the year, well, does your investment in SEO, does it make sense? Yeah, normally it should make sense because we mentioned it before. That's the best performing channel, but it's an exercise that as marketing managers, you guys really need to do. You need to see the money that SEO brings behind. Yeah? Right. It's a bit more specific, but once again, works like a charm when you do a workshop. The idea here is just to show you guys in terms of business goals, based on your goals, what that's going to look like in terms of SEO KPIs, and what kind of keywords we're going to be able to target through your SEO strategy. So at the top, you see your customer journey phases. So you see, you think / consider, you do, and you care. The care, it's a bit specific because SEO, it's an acquisition channel. So you can work on the care phase, but it works much better for higher up in the funnel. So if you take like your C phase, usually that's brand awareness. So that's where, blog articles, for instance, they work like a charm because you're going to try to target people that are kind of thinking about the products, but they're not really there yet. And for instance, we were talking about furniture earlier, but you can talk about interior design trends, for instance, and that works really well. And that's going to be in terms of the KPIs for your SEO, that's going to be like impressions, that's going to be like your click-through rate, this kind of stuff. If you move slightly lower down in the funnel, if you look at the think, consider phase, most of the time in SEO, most of the efforts, they're going to be done in this phase. So that's going to be people that, well, you're a marketing manager, so I'm not going to tell you what the think, consider phase is. But the idea is we're going to try to concentrate the efforts there because that's where we've got the most traffic. That's where we've got the most volume. But that's where we're already close to basically the type of conversions you guys are interested in. In terms of KPIs, it's more tricky. That's what we talked about earlier, like with the online forms, because here you're more on a qualified visits basis. So you're going to try, what we're going to do with you is that we're going to try to identify what behavior on the website indicates that people are actually potential customers. Can be a click on a banner, can be a PDF download, can be a scroll, can be a lot of things, but that's something that we need to determine with you. Common sense, right? Makes a lot of sense. Clear to everyone? Yeah? I can see some eyebrow raising.
I was wondering what's the difference with the do KPIs?
Well, it's not, you're not going to have a, well, in terms of KPIs, if you're trying to target just a do phase, you're going to be very low down the funnel. So it's very much like sales. It's going to be like online forms, but not like general contact forms, but more like quote request type of forms. So you're very much low down the funnel. And even the keywords you're going to try to target, I mean, they're going to be very competitive. So usually the way it works is that you do work on your think, consider phase, and that's going to help you to rank here, but that you're never really going to just focus on the do phase because the volume is so small. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. That's a quick trick. That's an exercise to do at home. Can do it with your Search Console account. Can do it with your report. You can do it with your Google Data Studio report if you've got one. The idea is basically have a look on Search Console on your organic traffic data and basically filter. Have a look at what's coming from branded traffic. Have a look at what's coming from traffic that doesn't contain the name of your brand. So that's going to give you basically your branded traffic and your generic traffic. And from there, if you've got some SEO campaigns, it's very easy. You just need to go in the campaigns and ask your campaign manager and say, well, look, I just want to know what's my average CPC when it comes to branded terms and when it comes to generic campaigns. And that's the very easy part if you've got an SEO campaign running. If you don't have an SEO campaign running, well, the easiest is get an SEO campaign running. If you still don't want to get one running, the easiest is that we've got tools. We've got like the Keyword Planner. SEMrush does it really well as well. They gave you an average CPC for whatever the keyword you give them. And that's going to give you an idea of what your branded traffic will cost you if you had to pay for it. Same thing for the generic traffic. And when you put the two together, I mean, based on this example, the value, if you had to pay for every single click, and I insist, I'm talking about clicks, not visit. I mean, we're trying to compare what's comparable. If you had to pay for every single click that you got through organic results, in that case, that would have cost about 46,000 euros per year. And the even better part is because what you work on this year, it's going to keep working the following years. You're going to have an incremental evolution in terms of the traffic that you generate. I like this one because it's very explicit. All right. That's going to be very quick because actually we've got someone that's much better than me and talk about cookie later. So what's going to change once we move from a cookie-based tracking to a non-cookie-based tracking? Well, everything that's happening on Google Search, it's not going to make an awful lot of difference for us. We're still going to be able to get the ranking. We're still going to be able to get the data from Google Search Console. Maybe not exactly the same, but it's going to be fairly similar. What's going to change is what you're going to see in Google Analytics. I mean, we can already see some changes. I mean, if some of you already moved to Google Analytics 4, It gives you a bit of an idea of what that's going to look like. It is quite different. So you need to shift the way you look at your analytics, and you're not necessarily going to look at the same KPIs, but Sam, we talk about that a bit later. Right, that's one of my favorite movies, by the way. All right, questions that were not asked so far?
Yeah, you spoke about the no cookies world for search engines, but not for the websites. What will be the impact? You say it will be impacted, but how will it be?
That's a trick question, because actually it's not for me, that'd be for my friend over there.
Great.
Any SEO related question?
If your goal is to brand awareness,
yes.
Would your cost per acquisition be the cost per click to get a visit to your website?
Well, that's a good question, because the way you traditionally look at SEO is that you think, well, you know, what's important to me is my clicks. You know, what's the traffic I get to my website. So if you're talking about brand awareness, you could think, well, my goal is to bring, you know, qualified visits. So I'm going to look at the amount of visits I get. I'm going to try to optimize my website for specific topics. But I'm still just going to look at what's going on my website. Now, another way you can look at it, which is more of a media type of thinking, you can just look at the impressions. I mean, how many impressions do I get when I'm on the first page of Google? Or when I'm in top 6 or whatever. And that way, it gives you, that's pure awareness what you're doing here. So you can do both, really. Yes.
Is it also conversion that you still need to have both worlds, so SEO and SEO, like that it's really boosting through both of them for the performances?
Well, it's very, to be fair, I mean, it's very...
You cannot just like only focus on SEO without SEO, or the other way around.
Well, 8 years ago, I would have told you SEO could be sufficient in some cases. Nowadays, what happens is that Google's business model is making money through ads. So if you have to have both. You have to have both. No. The only thing you can do, and one of the best possible strategies is basically try to use SEO as much as possible to stand by itself first, but also to improve the performances of your SEO campaigns. Because in terms of CPC, it makes a huge difference. I mean, if you've got good landing pages, it changes everything. For the DSA campaigns, which are going to be usually the cost per click is much lower, it's going to make a huge difference as well. So really, I mean, SEO needs to be thought as a way to generate cheaper, if I may say so, cheaper conversions. But also, you really need, when you think about your SEO, you need to think, all right, well, what about my landing pages? How am I going to optimize them? And that's going to be SEO. But no, you can't, in 2021, you can't say, I'm just going to do SEO and no SEO. No. 1, 2, 3, I'm out.
Okay.